These are legendary last-minute moments in rugby history.
Back, here it is for Johnny. Has he done it?
This could be the winner.
To set us off is the match earlier this year when the Lions met the Wallabies. The drama at the end was nothing short of a miracle.
Conan's waiting. Keenan!
And at the 2003 Rugby World Cup finals, that was what England needed. And everyone knew that Johnny Wilkinson was their man. So when the time was right, he did this. England had written history, and so had Japan, because back in 2015, at another World Cup, Japan eliminated South Africa in a rather dramatic match. It was a famous David and Goliath match.
Here we go! History!
But this next one was different. It was a battle of giants. Ireland was facing France in the 2018 Guinness Six Nations. That game was as brutal as rugby could get. They went back and forth until Johnny Sexton decided he had had enough. However, as much as playing fair might get you that far in the dying minutes of a game, some cheekiness can also come with the same good fortune. Like during that moment in 1978 when New Zealand faced Wales. This moment remains really controversial, but nevertheless, it counted. And so did the English loss in the 2019 Rugby World Cup final. South Africa had been lethal throughout the game through Handré Pollard, and in the dying minutes, he secured the South Africans a third World Cup with another kick, sealing a 32-12 victory. England's reputation had been bruised.
To make it 18 points by his boot, smacks it through.
But in 2024, England found an opportunity to wash off some of the stench of that 2019 World Cup defeat when they faced Ireland in a brutal battle. So, in the dying moments of the game, Marcus Smith did this, becoming a hero overnight. And speaking of heroes, Quade Cooper has to be one for his decisiveness for the Wallabies in the 2021 Rugby Championship. The last 10 minutes of that match had been tight. South Africa was ahead with a point, and in rugby, as in any other sport, a one-point lead is usually a risky one. But the Boks was soon awarded with an opportunity for them to completely put the game beyond the reach of the Wallabies. Perhaps it was the last chance of the game. So the kick was taken. The game was still on, but the Boks showed wastefulness again. Quade Cooper stepped up to take it. He had ruthlessly punished South Africa's mistakes with that final kick. Some will call it luck, but that's just the game. But sometimes luck might be bad.
Quade Cooper for the win. It's on its way! It's on its way!
Especially if you get to be at the wrong end of things, like the Lions fans during the dramatic 2025 Currie Cup final. But before we get into that, let's track back to where it all started. The 2024 Currie Cup finals, Lions versus the Hollywood Bets Sharks. A lucky moment in the 80th minute by Jordan Hendrickse ended up rewriting history. However, when the Lions reached the finals again in 2025 against the Griquas, they were sure they would win. And for a moment, they actually did, until the TMO revealed this. So from about 45 metres, George Whitehead turned what would be a dramatic comeback for the Lions into a historic match for the Griquas by ending their decades-long trophy drought. What a match! Before its game with Wales, Italy had gone 36 games without a win, and Wales was pushing the record to 37. But in the 79th minute, Capuzzo did this. It was a move so clutch that at the end of the game, Josh Adams handed him his Player of the Match award. In 2017, the Welsh team had also locked horns again with the English, and by the 75th minute, they could almost taste victory. But seconds later, the most unfortunate thing happened. The ball went to Elliot Daly.
Elliot Daly, Cuthbert chases him down. Elliot Daly for England scores.
Most of the moments we'll feature today are legendary, but what happened in Ellis Park, Johannesburg, at the 1995 Rugby World Cup final remains to be a match that meant more than just rugby. You see, in 1995, South Africa had just come out of the horrid apartheid movement earlier that decade, and that final was the first one they had reached since then. Winning it would be a good way to rebrand the nation's image internationally. But they were losing, until Joel Stransky decided to dare the rugby divinities. They answered. South Africa secured a 15-12 comeback victory. But even more special than the trophy and the victory was the history that had been made.
Back it comes to Strensky. Up goes the kick. Up goes the Lords.
But before New Zealand had reached those 1995 World Cup finals, they had faced England in the semi-finals, and England was blown away in the classic New Zealand version by Zinzan Brook. In the Allianz Stadium at the Guinness Six Nations, there was even more English drama when they faced France. With only seconds left, France was winning. Until England did what the French feared the most. But into some Australian rugby, this last-minute try by Shane Wright when the Saints played Leeds has to make it to the A Hall of Famer. As well as this play by the All Blacks finished by Frank Bunce when they played Australia in 1996. But 3 years later in Twickenham at the 1999 Rugby World Cup semi-final, Australia would exert their revenge and secure their spot in the finals at extra time with an even more audacious and unexpected moment by Stephen Larkham. That day Australia won 27-21. Their revenge was on a different opponent and their win was probably even impossible, but who cared? The Wallabies were headed to the 1999 Rugby World Cup final.
Regan. Drop goal from Larkham. Up it goes!
And in another final in 2007, but at the Super 14 finals, featuring the Sharks versus Bulls, that match has to be crowned the match with one of the craziest finishes ever. But 2 years later in 2009, at the Leicester versus Bath match, this last-minute try by Julien Dupuis would rival the 2007 Super 14 finals try by being one of the sneakiest, calmest and most composed game-winning tries you'll see today. But wait, I think I'll have to take that back, because what was this play from Northampton? And what about this by Lima Sopoaga for Waikato? I don't think I will be able to tell which of these three is the better one. Back into international rugby in 2009, at the Millennium Stadium, Ireland was planning war. A war that would set their names in the history books forever. Before the game, Ireland had never won a Grand Slam since 1948. It had been a total of 61 years of waiting. But Ronan O'Gara believed he had a plan to bring the trophy home. Nonetheless, he had to wait for the best moment to execute it. So, in the final moments of the game, after a lot of patience, he decided to act. Ireland won 17-15, and the trophy drought was over. Talk of ice in the veins by Ronan O'Gara. That moment was solid.
Drop it goal! Grand Slam at stake! He's got it!
But if we're talking about the White Knights of last-minute comebacks, Northampton has to be that team. Because watch how they disappointed Bath in what would be an insane comeback for the blue, black and whites.
Match to win it. What a noise!
And in more last-minute magic in the Rugby League, John Bennison saved St Helens in the final minute with a popular last-minute rugby move. Compared to women, comebacks are common in men's matches. But with 1 minute left and were 3 points down, the Red Roses had to do the improbable: win. But to win, they needed to fight back. With that in mind, here's what they did. The most iconic last-minute moments in rugby have mostly been penalty kicks. With that in mind, you can guess what this next one will be. But what makes the kick special is calm and the cool nerves from the young Rico Simpson. In moments like this, these are just the qualities that you demand from a player, lest you meet the fate Sharks fans faced at the last minute when Lionel Cronje did this in a critical game. Still in South Africa, but in international rugby, the British and Irish Lions tour of South Africa in 1997 had been a legendary series. But the highlight of the series had to be the second test, where Jeremy Guscott stepped up with a clutch moment that won the Lions the series. Ruthless.
Now Dawson gets it back to Guscott, and Guscott kicks it up, and the Lions are in the lead.
And that's what the Black Ferns showed the Red Roses in the 2022 World Cup final after the Red Roses had been wasteful with their 1-point lead. And to prove they had it in them, the Black Ferns pulled a defensive masterpiece when the Red Roses tried to snatch a late win. In 1999, at the Five Nations Championship, England had been hunting for another glory moment. To do that, they had to win the Grand Slam. However, Wales was standing in its way. So in injury time, Scott Gibbs made sure that the Englishman failed by pulling through one of the most terrific tries. Thanks to the conversion by Neil Jenkins, Wales won 32-31. Simply put, it had been a successful hate watch for England rivals, and so was the hate watch for the 2023 Lion critics in rugby union. The hate watch had been successful all thanks to one chaotic last-minute madness that always defines knockout rugby. And speaking of last-minute madness, the Broncos vs Raiders Rugby League Edition match has to top the list. Because from about 40 metres out, Ben Hunt's drop goal sunk the Raiders' hopes of winning. If you're an All Blacks fan, 2013 has to be one of the most important years in rugby for you, and I like to presume it's all thanks to the famous match at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. That year, New Zealand had won all the matches they had played until then. But winning that day was so crucial because if they won, they would become the first team to have had a perfect season in the history of rugby. But Ireland just needed the win as much as the All Blacks did, and the Irish seemed to want the win more than the All Blacks did. Well, that was the case until all the drama started. But the match had even more drama incoming. In the end, the All Blacks had preserved their perfect year.
Second time.
As we come to the end, I often like to believe that if there was an award for the team with the most legendary moments, the All Blacks would have to be the winners hands down. Because what the Wallabies did to the All Blacks in Wellington at the beginning of this millennium remains to be nothing short of a history-defining moment. In extra time, Australia came back from behind to win the Bledisloe Cup. And speaking of extra time clutch moments, I can't help but mention the 1995 Rugby World Cup quarter-final match between England and Australia. The game was tied and tough, but Rob Andrews had a cheeky move up his sleeves. England proceeded to the semi-finals. Finally, our last legendary moment today has to be the 2015 Rugby World Cup quarter-final of Scotland against Australia. This is a match that is usually remembered not just for the action on the field, but for one of the most controversial moments in recent rugby history. Before the game, Scotland had been considered the underdogs. But when they showed up, resilience could be seen throughout the match. They put blood, sweat, and their souls on the line, and their efforts had paid off because Scotland was winning despite going behind with many points early on in the match. Despite that fact, poor decision-making in the final minutes of the game still remains the talking point 10 years later. Here's Joubert, the ref who presided over the game, explaining what really happened.
It was simply a decision that I had to make in real time. We'd been reminded on several occasions, building up to the World Cup and again at the World Cup, that under no circumstances could we go outside of protocol.
But despite the admission of guilt, the wrong decision stood, and Australia left Twickenham with the win, while Scotland departed with greater heartbreak than questions. But these are just some of the moments that we highlight and talk about on Rugby Throwback. So if you enjoyed this one and would love to keep up with such news in rugby, we'd appreciate you giving us a like. But even more importantly, share with us your favourite last-minute moments in the comments and subscribe for more rugby moments like these.